Oh, sorry, Laura.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex, and hi, everyone. My name is Henry Fernando. I'm from Manila in the Philippines, and I'm currently a student in the Postgraduate Certificate of Philosophy program. This is actually my third year at ICE. So I guess I would like to start my little sharing by talking about why I applied for this program in the first place. So my first 2 years were spent in the undergraduate certificate programs in philosophy. Those were also directed by Alex. So I've known Alex for almost 3 years now, and he's been the best mentor you could possibly ask for. You're going to get the best mentoring from him as well. The difference is that in the first 2 years under ICE, those were purely online programs. Of course, we were given a lot of videos to watch. We were given a lot of readings to engage with on an online platform called the VLE. And of course, we had synchronous sessions via Zoom once every 3 or 4 weeks, with the end result being, or the final output being, papers. But when I found out that the next step in my journey in ICE could possibly be the PG certificate, which I think is very important insofar as it has a face-to-face component and teaching weekends, I felt that it was a challenge for me to continue growing, and for me to actually be able to engage with classmates in a more personal and intensive environment, because it is intensive. So how did I apply? So, like in many other programs in ICE, you begin by applying online. I think what makes the application for the PG cert a bit more unique, right, is two things. Firstly, you will have to submit like a sample piece of writing. If I'm not mistaken, I remember submitting pieces that I actually wrote for my undergraduate certificate courses, not only because they were recent, but because I felt them to be very intellectually stimulating. And then the second requirement that you have to do as part of the application is an interview. Although this interview is done online via Zoom. I know that the interview can be daunting or intimidating for some. So let me say right off the bat that you don't have to be worried about anything at all. Uh, my interviewers were two of my teachers from my past years at ICE. The first was Alex Carter. The second was Dr. Milena Ivanova, who also teaches at ICE. And what I found to be surprising about the interview process was how personal and casual and intimate it was. Not only because I had already known them as teachers from the past 2 years, but because they were asking me questions that you would not expect a very big academic institution like Cambridge to necessarily ask. Of course, they asked some questions which you might expect, like what is your interest in the course? What are your goals? In which case I said, well, I'm interested in applying for even further studies after, maybe an MPhil in philosophy, for example. But eventually, we segued into very personal questions about your views and your relationship with philosophy. For example, they asked me, how often do you read texts, or what was the last thing you read, or what other activities do you do in your life that have to do with philosophy? And I remember telling them that while I'm at the gym, I just listen to philosophy podcasts, and I think that kind of gave them an insight into the kind of student that I am. And if I were to give you advice on how to approach that interview, it's simply to be yourself, be genuine. They are not looking for any rigorous or very formal background in philosophy. And I'm here to tell you that most of the students in the PG cert right now, most of my classmates, have very little to no background in philosophy at all, and they got accepted. Why? Because philosophy as a discipline is not limited to students who have, studied it formally in universities. When you ask questions about anything in the world, about what you do every day, your ways of life, about ethics, about how to treat other people, about COVID vaccines, at some level, you're eventually going to find yourself doing philosophy. So you don't have to over prepare for it, right? You simply have to explain what your interests are and what you want to get out of this course. But I'm not saying that you should under prepare for it either. You simply have to uh, have an idea of what you're expecting from the program and what you can contribute, what you can bring, and also what the program can do for you. What do you plan to do with the PG cert? So this brings me to the second and more important part of my sharing, I guess, which is what is my current experience as a student. Well, I really love the PG cert. It's the best philosophy program I've ever been a part of. That's for sure. As I mentioned earlier, I'm from the Philippines. So a lot of my classmates, of course, they do come from England, but many of us come from a variety of other countries around the world as well. In my own clique, for example, in my friend group, one of us is from Mexico, two of us are from Switzerland, um, another one is from England as well. But of course, you also get an opportunity to interact with everyone, right? Not just during the actual sessions, but in between, when you have meals or when you have breaks or when you have afternoon tea together. I highly encourage you to be able to reach out and find opportunities to connect and network with everyone. Because when you have a group of people coming from such diverse backgrounds, you're able to get so many perspectives and so many different views on philosophical um, topics. So it is not at all a problem if you don't have any strict or formal background in philosophy. In many ways, it's a strength because when you come into the program with very fresh expectations and very little philosophical baggage, which you might pick up after a few years of studying philosophy, you're able to give perspectives from different fields. And I think it's very important, and I know Alex will agree with this. It's very important for philosophy to have an interdisciplinary dimension as well. So if you have a background in engineering, a background in medicine, a background in business or finance like I do, that's perfectly fine. We're all going to find common ground to talk to everyone else. So before the actual teaching weekends, they also share a lot of readings which you can read at your own pace and time. There are also some videos at first that you can watch to help you get acquainted with the topic. But it's the teaching weekends themselves, of course, which are the highlight of the entire course because that's when you're able to ask your questions and come face to face with your professor. In which case, as Alex mentioned, I just had my second teaching weekend with Professor Cecilia Moratori. She talked about Kant. I've studied Kant for a few years now, but I think I learned so much about Kant once more, so you can never learn enough. And it was just interacting with my classmates and my fellow students that really captured my imagination, and it just made me want to learn even more about philosophy in general. So one last point. One of the most important activities that you can do as a student to really maximize the opportunity that you will have as part of the PG cert is the opportunity to engage in supervisions with Alex. I am not uh, mincing words when I say that these supervisions, which Cambridge is so famous for, right? Supervisions and tutorials, they're going to spin your head around. You're going to enter a supervision thinking that you have a very clear and direct answer to a question. But there's a very large chance that you're going to come out of that supervision with a radically different view, a better view, something more refined. Any ideas beforehand, that's fine. Give you ideas or a reading list or some direction on what you want to write. But like philosophy in general, right? Philosophy does not dictate, or the program will not dictate how to think. The program is there to help you how to think, to help you flesh out your own views and flesh out your implicit beliefs and assumptions and values, and finally putting that in paper. So I'm going to end soon, but I would just like to end with the insight that this is probably or possibly the best program that you can join. So I do encourage you to apply. You learn so much more about philosophy and perhaps about life more broadly, because that's what philosophy is about. It's about clarifying our views about the world and giving us something to think about and helping us live in our day-to-day lives. So that's it. Back to Alex or Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.